Brendan Dassey trial transcript, day 8, page 34. So even though this doesn't have any relevance to the issue of suggestibility, you included it because it was in the top 4 of the high scores. I present information that is that's abnormal. Okay, can you then go through the other 3? I'm going to. I don't want to put words in your mouth, doctor, but were these the 3 that you felt were important in consideration of the suggestibility issue? Yes. Okay, can you go through your results first with, I guess, the top? The top one is social avoidance. The T-score was 72. It's easier to explain the percentile of one. First of all, if you can you describe what is percentile and what is the significance of percentile? I can. Out of 100 individuals who would have taken that test, 99 out of 100 would have scored in a more normal range than did Brendan. And so, for instance, on the social avoidance, 99 would have scored at a more normal range and of social avoidance or of being socially avoidance. Okay, what is the significance in regards to that in your assessment of suggestibility? Individuals who have social problems, who are passive, who are withdrawn, have a greater likelihood of being suggestible. What's the next category that you looked at with the MMPI-A? Well, I'd like to skip down, if I could please, to social introversion. The reason being that social introversion is a separate scale from social avoidance, and you rely on different questions that go into those scales from the MMPI-A, but they're still basically evaluating the same thing. Social withdrawal, social avoidance, and on that particular one, for social introversion, his percentile was 2.3. In other words, roughly 97 adolescents out of 100 would have scored in a more normal fashion, a lower fashion than he on that scale. So he is more socially introverted than 97 others, is that correct? According to this scale, yes. And then there was one other scale that you looked at? Yes, and that's social alienation. And social alienation, his score was 1.5 percentile. Again, 98.5, if we could call half, 98.5 individuals would score on a more normal range on that scale than did Brendan. Social alienation is different than the other two because a person who is socially avoidant and socially introverted would tend to be socially alienated. They would be cut off from those with whom they interact and avoided by those with whom they interact because they don't reach out, and so they're just alienated from people who could be otherwise friends, or they live not psychotically, but they live in their own world, alienated from society, so to speak. These scales, these terms, are these your terms or are these terms that you received from the tests? They're straight from the MMPI manual and from the manual, and scales from the MMPI. The test preparers? The test preparers. What other tests did you administer for Brendan or to Brendan? Well, I think I think I'll skip the suggestibility scale and I'll skip down to the 16PF. The 16PF was developed 15 years ago at the University of Illinois by a psychologist by the name of Dr. Raymond Cattell. He did what's known as factor analysis. He put down a number of normal questions that would measure normal traits of normal individuals, and then he did a statistical procedure to pull out similarities of those items. And he found 16 factors and one global factor. So the global factor, overall factors, the accommodation, independence. The other 2 on the exhibit there, shy and deferential versus socially bold and dominant, are factors. One of the 2 of the 16 factors contained on the instrument that measures normal personality traits. How does this assist you in developing an opinion or determining whether someone might be vulnerable to suggestion? Review of research shows that individuals who are accommodating, that is dependent, shy, differential, more passive, have a greater chance of being depending on the degree that it's shown, is substantially greater chance of being suggestible. And that comes from research and also my training and the books that I've reviewed and the research I've done online suggests the very use of this test showed this, and to review the outcome on these 3 particular scales. What results did you obtain from this test in regards to Brendan? Well, unfortunately, I don't have and wasn't able to easily obtain the percentile, so all I can do is show to the jury that for accommodation, he's on the lower end of the scale. not every one, but still the lower end of the scale on accommodation, the lower end of the scale on shy, and the lower end of the scale for being deferential or passive, which are all consistent with each other and are consistent, by the way, with the MMPI results. What other tests did you perform in regards to Brendan? I performed also the state trait expression, the state trait anger expression inventory, which is an objective test that measures normal and abnormal ways of expressing anger. Why did you choose that test to conduct in regards to this evaluation of Brendan? Well, I wanted to see if he was angry. If a person is angry and dominant, then they tend to not be suggestible. If the score shows that they're passive and deal with their anger by keeping it to themselves or not really being angry very often, then that would again be related to suggestibility. What results, if any, did you determine in regards to this test as it applied to Brendan? The test scores showed that he is passive and subdued. Before I go to the next test, let me go back to the 16PF, and I suppose possibly in regards to the state trait anger expression inventory, at the end of as you were finishing testifying as to the 16PF, you said that it's also important to consider this test as a way to validate the MMPI to see if it's consistent. Is that correct? It's important to synthesize all of the different tests into one conclusion and consider all of them, yes. So let me ask you this hypothetically. If, for instance, you had performed 4 tests and 3 seemed to be consistent, but 1 seemed to be well away from what you've seen thus far, would that offer you some concern in the testing of the individual? It would not. It would cause me concern on how to most accurately put together those results into an opinion. So it had an impact on your final opinion? It would, absolutely. Want to pull the mic a little closer? Absolutely. Sorry for interrupting you. Let's go, we'll go to the next set of tests that you performed. Yes, and what was that? Well, I performed 2 IQ tests. One is the Wechsler Abbreviated Scale of Intelligence, and it originally came from David Wechsler in 1932 in a Bellevue clinic, and it was called the Wechsler Bellevue Intelligence Test, established in 1939. Since then, it's been revised and abbreviated as well, and the Wechsler Abbreviated Scale of Intelligence reliably assesses intellectual functioning, IQ of adults and children. Now I have on the screen Exhibit 228. Does that indicate results of those 2 intelligence quotients tests? I don't know if the jury can read it, so I would need to read it, I believe, without blinding the court reporter. How's that? That's good. Now to explain the top part, if you'd like me to, please. It shows an average IQ is 100. That's why 50 people out of 100 would score higher, who obtain a score of higher of 100, and 50 would score lower than 100. Then from 90 down to 70, or actually 90 down to 84, is the low average range of intelligence. From 70, Attorney Kratz, Judge, if I may, on what scale is he referring to? That 90 to 84 is low average? If he's talking about the Wechsler or Kaufman, I'd like him to state that. The court, all right. Can you identify which of the tests reflect those scores? The witness, the Kaufman has an IQ score of 83, which is not a test that I described yet, but it's comparable to the Wechsler Abbreviated Scale of Intelligence. Attorney Freeman, Doctor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think the question by the prosecutor, the objection was, is the base used to evaluate the actual results the same on the Wechsler and Kaufman? That is the base of what is average, 100, what is below average, what you said was 90 to 84, and probably the other numbers on the scale, the same scale used in completing a base for the purposes of interpreting the results in both the Kaufman and the Wechsler? Yes. Okay, now if you could continue, I'm sorry to interrupt you, in regards to what the actual results were with Brendan and how they compare to the base scale. Attorney Kratz, Judge, if I may just sharpen my point, I wanted to make sure that this doctor was saying that on the Wechsler scale, 90 to 84 is considered below average. I think that's what he said, and I want to make sure that was in fact your testimony. The witness, my testimony is based on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which shows that individuals who have IQs of 84 to 70 to 84 is one facet of diagnosing a borderline mental intelligence. On the other hand, according to Wechsler norms, a score of 70 to 80 is in the borderline range. Attorney Kratz, if I may then, Judge, I'm going to object as irrelevant. If he's saying the Wechsler scale goes all the way down to 80 for low average, doesn't go to 84, and that's what this chart says, that would be irrelevant. If he's using some other thing to score it with, like the DSM-4, which I now heard, that's something other than this chart purports, and I would interpose an objection. The court, Mr. Freeman? Attorney Freeman, well, I can ask the doctor some more foundation questions as to the chart itself that he created. The court, I think we're going to have to do that, and I'll withhold ruling on the objection. Attorney Kratz, thank you, Judge. Attorney Freeman, Doctor, you provided this a chart that was used to make the Exhibit 228, correct? Yes. And you included both the Wechsler and the Kaufman intelligence quotient on results and the test on the one chart, correct? Correct. Why is it that they're both combined, or why is it you felt necessary to combine both to one exhibit? To make it simpler to understand and I use the Wechsler, I use the DSM-4 norms simply because that's what's commonly used. And if I would not use those, individuals would be asking me why I didn't use those, because in every mental status and psychiatric report under the that comes out for clinical and forensic reasons, they ask precisely what a person's diagnosis is on the DSM-4. Well, again, if we can set aside DSM-4 for just a moment, specifically regards to Wechsler and Kaufman, is there a base scale under the Kaufman intelligence test? No. Is there a base scale from the Wechsler? You mean base scale on how to divide it into categories? Correct. Yes. Okay. Under Kaufman? No. Just on Wechsler? Yes. So this scale then is actually the Wechsler. The scores are from the Wechsler and Kaufman. No, I'm sorry, doctor, the scale, not the score. Oh, I'm sorry. It's this document here where it says IQ percentile. Is this actually the Wechsler? No. Attorney Kratz, renew my objection, Judge. Attorney Freeman, is it the court? I understand. Hold on a second here. This is going to get terribly confusing unless the witness can segregate. One, what's on this test? What's on the exhibit in the graphic portion of the exhibit, what that reflects. And two, if that's different than Wechsler test as it appears to Attorney Freeman. I understand, Judge. The court. B, that he then explains that as well. Now, can he do that? Attorney Freeman, I'm going to ask the doctor that. The court. All right, go ahead. Doctor, can you distinguish the two, the Wechsler versus the Kaufman? Yes. And without using the exhibit, doctor, did you have come to any conclusions with regards to the evaluation of Brendan pertaining to the Wechsler intelligence test? It's my conclusion that he is in the borderline range of intelligence. What score did he, do you recall what score he, you calculated in regards to that test? Which one again? Kaufman. Kaufman was 83, and you indicated that's in the average or below average scale. That's in the borderline range. Borderline. According to, can you describe what borderline means? Again, Judge, borderline from what scale, I have to ask. Attorney Freeman, the question was in regards to Wechsler, and if the prosecutor would listen to the answer, he would have heard him say that scale. Attorney Kratz, we'll hear if it's the Wechsler scale. Go ahead, doctor. The witness, I misspoke. According to the Wechsler scale, it's in the low average range, the lower end of the low average range. What significance does that have, being in the lower average range? It means, well, since he's in the lower end of the low average range, the significance means that he has problems, as shown in his school records, with and his need for special education, his problems with learning, problems with concentration, problems with functioning at an intellectual level that's in the average range. What is the percentile? Is there, or I should ask you, is there a percentile associated with the score Brendan received on the Wechsler test? There may be. I don't have it written down. I think it may have been on the chart that you took off the screen. I know it was there. I don't have that written down. Do you have any notes with you as to those results? No. Well, I may. Doctor, did you? I do. Okay. I do, and that's at the 10th percentile. What significance does the percentile have, or how can you Can you describe what that significance is in regards to evaluating the intelligence test results pertaining to Brendan?